right. So this one is a hard one. I just want to start with that. And there aren't any good answers really about how this is going to go down, but we will talk through some of the things that have an impact on how to think about and situate yourself in case of or in preparation for a dementia prognosis and the toll that that can take over the long term, which is really the problem with dementia. The other thing that is extra challenging, of course, about it is that you're in a position where either you have to take action to end your life much earlier than you probably would be inclined to otherwise, in order to ensure that you still have the agency to take the action that you believe you want to take. If you have cancer, you can wait till 6 days before you're going to die from cancer to take the medical aid and dying medicine. So you can really live pretty darn close to how much you want. But with dementia, you're talking, maybe years earlier than you might otherwise be participating in some amount of life if you decide to take some sort of action regarding your diagnosis or prognosis of dementia. So that's one very challenging thing, is that it has to happen so early and it has to cut off so much of your life. The other thing is that it's so random. There's a comment in the dementia community that if you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. And that is really true, and a good way just kind of to be a reminder of that is that because it's a brain injury, it could be anything, right? It could be the neuron between your appendix and your heart valve that could be the one that fries out, or it could be the neuron that, keeps you smiling, or it could be the one that releases dopamine, or it could be the one that works your foot, or whatever. There's just so many pathways and so many opportunities to go wrong. It's like every cell in your brain has an opportunity to cause a problem, where if one cell in your liver goes wrong, it's not, not kind of the same reflective problem. So because of that, imagining what you might want in a certain situation and how you might react to a certain situation just becomes extra challenging. So I just want to start off with saying this is really challenging. We're not going to get through the end of this conversation and be like, oh yeah, great, I'll sign the form and then we'll be all set. Because even after you sign the forms, it's still tough. So I do have a couple PowerPoints. Sometimes I have a lot of PowerPoints when there's a lot of details to go through. I have a couple PowerPoints just basically to raise some issues. And I have a few videos that I think I'm going to show, just a couple 1 to 2 minute videos of some people who are experiencing their dementia process. And then if anybody has any experiences themselves, if you have things that you'd like to talk about what your biggest concerns are, about how you're going to handle this if it comes, or if it's already here, what you've done to take some action. And then brainstorm a little bit about ways that you can prepare as best you can. So does anybody want to say anything before we go to the PowerPoint quickly?
Not sure.
Okay, we'll do that and then come back for your questions. Okay, can you see that?
Molly, could I ask that the people that are unmuted go ahead and mute?
Great, that's a great idea.
Breaking in.
Great. So will everybody put yourself on mute if you can? And I can't do that because I'm not actually the host of this meeting. So we have to just rely on you. All right. I think everybody on this call knows me. If you don't know me, you can check in afterwards and we can talk a little bit about how I ended up being here. Okay, so I titled this about dementia. There's a lot of facets, not just the fact that everybody that has some kind of brain problem reacts in a different way, but there's both different levels and different causes that then cause different things to happen somewhat more predictably than otherwise. A lot of people that are getting to be a little bit middle-aged, certainly the baby boomers of all levels of baby boomer generation, have been hearing a lot of things in their own life and with their friends about what they're calling now mild cognitive impairment, MCI. And that is right now understood to be just the aging process, not any kind of disease, not necessarily escalating into some terrible thing, not likely to cause your death because your whole brain has melted out, but just processing speed for the most part, finding the connections, getting the neurons to go through, getting the data to come back. It just takes longer, like it takes your stomach longer to digest food. It's just a kind of fading away of the prime of the organ of your brain working as it used to work, but not an indication of specific and ongoing mortal damage to your brain. Then more colloquial age-related memory loss is what people mostly call that thing, mild cognitive impairment. You're getting older, and so you just don't remember your words as well. You don't remember how to do where you left your keys last week, what you had for lunch, things like that, that just aren't as ingrained in your brain process as they would have been as a younger person. And then Alzheimer's is the most commonly used word, and sometimes most often just used in exchange for dementias of all varieties. It's the most prevalent kind of dementia, and it's named Alzheimer's just because of the person who discovered it. And right now, they think it has to do with some kind of buildup in the brain of some sort of materials. They have a variety of ideas about it. The only way they can find out if those materials are building up in your brain right now is through an autopsy. So there's no real way to really diagnose if you have Alzheimer's dementia or some other kind of dementia or some brain injury or whatever it is. So it's a little bit tricky, but it is the biggest population of people with what they generally call dementia. And then another big category is vascular dementia, meaning there's something wrong with your veins, your blood pipes. And so that's either a swelling, the area in your blood in your brain is pushing out through the blood vessels and squishing some of the cells around there, or it explodes in a stroke or a mini stroke and leaks some blood into the cells around there, and then those cells die off. And oftentimes other ones around the area will take up the task, and you'll just have a sort of a temporary episode of having some kind of brain dysfunction, and then it'll sort of come back online. But usually with vascular dementia, if you have veins that tend to have some kind of bleed, then they'll have more kinds of bleeds. So it can still be fatal in the way, but just from a different cause than what Alzheimer's dementia would cause fatality. Okay, so first I'm just going to show a couple. This is a big list, but I'm just going to show a few of these videos. These are people who post mostly on TikTok. I got them from Facebook Reels, and I do follow a lot of these people. And what I'll say about these is the most striking thing to me about these stories, well, you'll see one of the videos of these people, is that every single day, these people are posting, in essence, this same video. So one of the most challenging things about any of these dementias is the fact that it is so relentless, that there's no relief for the caregiver, the person watching over, and there's often no relief for the person who's experiencing it. So that is not really going to come through so much in these individual shots of these individual days, but just keep that in mind, that this is day after day after day. Okay, so the first group is Cameron. This is a young 40-year-old woman whose father, who's 80, lives with her. And this is a day with them.
I am somehow thinking about, I know what.
I don't know what. You didn't go to the bathroom?
No,
Oh.
not going back.
Oh. Well, we'll see.
Oh, yeah, I've got enough. What you call it? Backup
Mm-hmm.
that, enough. Enough being
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
that it makes it easy.
Mm-hmm. To not go back.
Right. I would have to get in with a, a group here
Mm-hmm.
that does that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
I know.
and I am somehow thinking about, I know what,
Oh, sorry.
I don't know what. You didn't go to the bathroom?
no.
Oh.
Okay, let me see. Okay, there we go. So that was literally over and over again. Okay, this is also them.
What's up, Dad? What you doing?
Hmm?
What you doing?
It's something for me to have when somebody wants to kill me.
Why would somebody want to kill you?
I don't know, but they do.
No.
Sometimes they do.
No. I don't think so. Hey, why don't you follow me? We're gonna go that direction, back here, okay? I'm gonna have to get ready for bed so you can get some rest, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay, and this one.
When my going up time comes up, you and I will have to make a decision that of why and how. Can we do that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Of course.
okay.
Yeah. I just want what's best for you, Dad.
Well, would be the thing for me to do, I believe.
Yeah, I believe so. Okay, okay, okay.
Okay, so a sweet old man. He's been good this whole process. Confused and hard to listen to. And her patience, she has a very style of distracting. So she will turn him on to something new. Let's do this or go here. And you can see a little bit of that. Okay, these people live actually in Elk Grove. The son, who's in his early 60s, is a lawyer, and the dad is 92, and he's amazed every single day about being 92. And he's always looking for something.
You don't drive and you live with your kids, so you don't have keys anymore.
I have a car.
No, you sold your car 4 years ago.
What do I do then?
Dad, you're not gonna find anything. You're not gonna find anything in there, Dad.
You're probably right.
Dad, listen to me.
Yeah.
You don't have any keys because you sold your car 4 years ago.
I sold my car
4 years ago, and now you live with your kids, so you won't find any keys. But you get driven everywhere you need to go. You've been living this way for more than 2 years with Mark and I, and you're doing just fine. You're doing fine. You don't have to worry. You have nothing to be upset about. You just live with your kids, but you don't drive anymore because you're 91.
What about my checkbook?
Your checkbook's at Mark's. Mark, your bills go to Mark's house, so that's where your checkbook is.
I can't believe it on my checkbook.
Well, it's at Mark's, Dad.
My checkbook's at Mark?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll buy that. I'll buy that.
Fair enough.
In the meantime, what am I gonna do?
Well, you're gonna wait and you're gonna live here with me. We just get through the day. That's what we do.
I don't have any money
Yeah.
without my checkbook.
You got plenty of money. You go to the bank all the time and you get money.
I do without my checkbook.
You sure do, yeah. What is going on? What are you worried about?
Well, you can't be able to start the car up.
Dad,
Where the battery goes.
how will the battery go down?
Because it's being used, it's blinking. Red light is blinking in the dashboard.
That's the alarm in the car. That's a little blinking alarm. It's supposed to be
Well, it's
on.
gonna requires a battery to make that
Dad,
alarm.
I can't turn it off. It's the alarm. If I turn that off, then the alarm goes off.
Then what?
It's supposed to be on.
It doesn't, no, it never blinks like that
It
before.
has, Dad, it's not your car. It's my car.
Black Subaru is
Yeah.
your car?
That's my car. Please, you don't try and turn that off.
My car.
It's not your car, but don't try and you can't turn that off.
Change that light from blinking there where your battery out there.
All right, well, I'll deal with
All right,
it.
just telling you.
All right.
Just telling you what you want.
All right.
Okay, so a little bit difficult to deal with, a little bit difficult. Okay, here is a husband and son who are taking care of the wife/mother.
How you doing today? How are you doing?
Hey, Josh is talking to you.
Yeah. Hey, how you doing today? You look all nice. Oh, you look like Christmas. You got this pretty necklace on. Look at that. And a thing in your hair, right there. You're all dressed up. Yeah. Looking all pretty. Did I tell you look pretty? Yeah. Good, you do look pretty. How you doing this morning? Good. Good? You were giving me smiles earlier. How you doing today? How?
And this is much later, about a year later.
I love you. You love me too? Do you? Yes. Good. Sleep tight, okay? Okay. Bunny right here with you? Yeah. I sleep right over there. Yeah.
All right, good night.
Got Bunny right here. Okay? You alright? We should find it. Your Bunny? It's right here. It's right here by you. That's his paw right there. Okay.
All right, good night.
Good night. Stay covered up. It's very cold out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I love you. I love you. All right, good night.
Okay, again, easy, but hard to watch. And then this one really blows it out of the water.
Wait, get out of my house. I live here. Yeah, well, you're gonna get kicked out. I'm going to a lawyer. No, I take care of you. Yeah, you're not taking care of anybody. And get that off your face. You got the smirkiest, messy face I ever looked at. Why are you saying that? Big pimples on his cheeks and everything. Think that's attractive? I don't have pimples. Yeah, you got pink and pink and pink. And you look like you stink. You go keep it up. Keep it up, and you come running in one night, and that'll be the end. And I'll say, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, Lord, hallelujah. Yep, they're all out there waiting now. Well, me and you live together with Debbie. No, we don't. Yeah, I don't live with Debbie. Yep, Debbie lives upstairs in the apartment. Oh, upstairs here, but then we were getting out anyway. Debbie's my mom. She gets to be your mother when she didn't even go near your father. What do you mean? It's quite a balance. My dad was Dick Finnegan. Dick Finnegan. Oh, 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 oh. Well, I love you, Nana. Well, I don't love you, so just get it out of your head so you don't have to worry about it. Okay. I hope you have a better day. Well, I hope. My days are gone.
Okay, so there's the view. Anyone want to say anything about that? Giving a minute since everybody was so kind to put themselves on mute. All right, so, you know, there's a lot of talk right now about how this is so prevalent and there's so much of it and everybody's getting it and it's going to weigh down our healthcare system, and those things are all true. And also is true that we're all dying of something, and this is just one of the things. It's not the thing that's going to get every one of us. You don't have to be convinced for sure that you're going to end up in one of these vegetative states that these people are progressing to. It's about the same actually as cancer. 30% of the people over 74 years old are suffering from a cancer diagnosis, and 30% of the people that are over 74 years old are getting a dementia diagnosis. So it's prevalent, it's expensive because it lasts a long time. You stay alive a long time while you have it, so it's expensive, but it's not worse in terms, more prevalent in terms of the things that are going to get you than any of the other things that are going to get you. And it is the most common indicator of having some kind of dementia is age, but age is not the cause of dementia. It just gives you enough time for something else to go wrong. So if you are old, you don't want to feel that just because you're old, you're for sure going to be declining into dementia, because that's just not true. You could be totally competent and yourself all the way until the very end and die of something else. And this can be just one of the things that can be the problem along the way. Okay, I just read about a week ago, and probably some of you read this too in the New York Times, and a really interesting article. They correlated over, I think it was 500,000 people, a huge sampling. They correlated their Experian and other credit reporting scores with diagnoses of dementia. And they found out that at least 1 year before, and probably there was statistically significant evidence that up to 5 years before a diagnosis of dementia, people started messing up their checking account and other accounting things. And that it was very predictive of a future problem with dementia. So you can look at that, you know, you can look back, you can look at yourself now, and you can see I bounced 2 checks in the last month at the same place. And I went, oh my God. So, right, it happens. But on the other hand, if you notice that things are happening like that, that you're not doing your record, part of it is creating an interest to do it in the first place. Your brain doesn't keep track of the fact that it's an important thing. Part of it is doing the task itself, maybe the calculating and the math or the writing in columns or things like that. Mostly it starts out as a thing where it's just not very fun and interesting. So you don't do it for a long time, and then you don't do it for a long time. And so then it's a big project, then it's a big project. So it's harder to do it right. So it kind of builds on itself. But this is one very interesting observation on how you can see and what you might need to prepare for as you're preparing for a long-range plan if you see dementia in your future. Okay, so we saw some of the videos just to review some of the more challenging behaviors and situations that are coming up. One is a flat affect. Some people are just driven mad by their formerly loving and engaged partner not caring at all about them or anything else. So it doesn't have to be aggressive and awful to still just break your heart on it, and to do it every day, to try to get someone excited, to say I love you to them and not have them respond, to not be interested in things. It's surprisingly very challenging experience to have to be around a person with just a flat affect about everything. Pacing is another one that people report a lot. It's really challenging, is just people are on the go. They don't know what they need, and so they're restless, and they're walking, opening, looking in, finding, looking for their keys, looking for their checkbook, just going all the time, because they can't be satisfied in their mind with an end point, because there is no end point. There's just openness. Sometimes it hits areas of your brain that have to do with emotional management and anger, probably because it's a very frustrating situation. Sometimes because people are angry style people ahead of time, but oftentimes not at all. I feel like I remember seeing some stories about that Nana, the last video we watched, that she was a charming woman before she got dementia. And frontal temporal dementia, which hits the front part of your brain, which has the executive power to control your behavior and to have emotional reactions, has a specific kind of dementia associated with it. And so those people can be very challenging because their personality changes a lot. Physical resistance, if you're confused and people are grabbing you and moving you and putting you underwater and shoving food in your face and changing your diapers and things like that, and you're confused, then physical resistance is a normal but hard, difficult situation to deal with regarding people who just don't really know what's going on. And so they're resisting things that are scary appropriately, but not appropriately at the same time. And then a big broad category of things that partially that money issue falls into, but all kinds of impulse control things, right? You're just not managing yourself. You're not looking at yourself from afar, and you're not evaluating the customs of the culture. And you're not therefore following the rules that you would otherwise follow. And you might talk out loud in church, or you might enact sexual behaviors, or do a lot of online shopping, or gambling, or stealing, or things that normally would be constrained because your brain was managing over yourself, no longer are constrained. Now, I've also seen very funny things, you know how they say where the memories that you lose the most are the most recent ones. So very old memories, almost everyone that I've seen that has dementia is very good about their manners. Like if they burp, almost everyone will say, "Excuse me." It's just so ingrained so early in your life that some of those things that seem like they would fall under this impulse control thing are in a different pathway, where it's sort of an autonomic response to saying please and thank you, or to saying excuse me or whatever, that they're not really in the brain thing of an impulse control and realizing that you did something that was embarrassing and therefore apologizing for it, but instead just reacting to a command situation where one person says something and the other responds. Okay, so obviously it's expensive. It's expensive because the care is intense, and it's expensive because it goes on for a long time. And that's one of the things, if you are thinking about dementia, what your plans are going to be about financial situations. Last month or a few months ago, we had a program on people who were single, solo agers. And pretty much everyone, even if you're a couple, is eventually going to be a solo ager. But one thing that's a stopgap measure, if you're single and you're not taking anybody else's financial situation down with you, is that you can just spend whatever money you have on your medical care. And then when it runs out, Medicare, Medicaid will come in and take over the expenses. One thing planning wise that you should think about is there are some old age homes of the escalating variety where you go first independent living and then assisted living and then memory care kind of situation, who will not accept Medicaid. So before you enroll, even as a person who's in independent living, you want to know that that place that you already live in would take Medicaid by the time you ran out of money and needed to be put on Medicaid so you can stay in the same place. Because otherwise you'll move to a place and then when you get dementia, you'll have to move again, and that would be a bad situation. So when in your shopping, find some place that accepts Medicaid for later down the line. Cost to caregivers, we talked about this in other classes. Caregivers give up a lot of time, a lot of job opportunities, a lot of vacation days, a lot of money taking people to doctors and picking up prescriptions and things like that. There's just a lot of actual financial costs. And then of course, emotional cost. If any of those videos that we saw today happened to us over and over and over and over again every day for 11 years, it would be costly. It would be costly to our well-being. Resources in general, the thing that most people say when they talk about planning for dementia is that they don't want to be a burden. And it's a burden in a lot of ways, right? It's the burden of caregiving. It's the burden of spending all the money. It's the burden of keeping your spouse from doing things that they want to do. It's the burden of being bored or afraid every day on your very own being. There's just a lot of resources that are even government resources. Some people don't want the government to pay for 10 years of them living in an assisted living facility. They'd rather just be done. So whatever resources are important to you to preserve, there's a cost benefit analysis to be had there. And then a lot of people talk about dignity. And I put that in question marks because yes, in a way, it's a huge cost to your dignity to be demented and to have people care for your eventually every physical need. And some of those are very indignant things that people have to do to you to keep your physical body alive and clean and fed and things like that. The reason it's in question marks is because it's also the thing that is most troublesome about planning to end your life somehow or dying of dementia, as you eventually will, which is, dignity is really the opposite side of the coin of shame. And so a question arises in us as individuals who are going through really any dying process, because all of it is a little bit gruesome. But how do you grapple with the idea of your sweet, light-filled being being needy? And what is it that you're going to feel about yourself and about other people? And is there a way to see through that reflexive kind of shame that you're not worthy of it, or it's gross, or you're embarrassing, or whatever kind of it is, and embrace something that's more sweet about being cared for and about being someone that's worthy of care? So just something to think about in terms of a larger picture of, well, I don't want to, be embarrassing, or want people to have to change my diapers, or whatever it is to what extent, hi Cynthia, what extent it is important to you to be the way you are now in the process of all this. So, and also, as we'll talk about next, sort of the legal, what you're allowed to do, nobody can really kill you just because you're embarrassing, right? They can kill you because you're suffering, and maybe there's a way to describe and convince and categorize your indignity as suffering. But suffering is the standard by which you can take action to end your life, not that you're embarrassed about yourself. So it becomes tricky in a legal sort of way also. All right, did somebody want to say something? Okay, So this is just the headline from an article. Again, one of the things I talked about at the beginning that's challenging is that you don't know what you're going to want, right? So this article was written by a son, his father and he were both doctors. The father said, if he got dementia, do not rescue me. And then they rescued him. And his father then reported back after he was rescued. To some extent, he was grateful for the extra days that he got to spend with his grandchildren and his family and things like that after he was rescued. So one thing is, who knows how you're going to feel? You know, if you were Betty in those videos we watched, if you were Betty and you were just having a sweet time with your sweet husband of 67 years tucking you into bed, you might not say, if you could say, yeah, you know, let me die tomorrow. It might not be what you would say. Even if when you were 65, you wrote in your advance directive, if I ever didn't know who my kid was or my husband was, that I don't want to live. You know, we can't just suffocate Betty at this point just because she doesn't know what's going on. So it's that difference between what you think you want now and what you will act like you want then is much wider and farther apart than it is in almost any other ending situation. So it's much more complex to figure out the difference. Okay, and then here's another perspective. This young man, he's I think 47, his mother had early onset Alzheimer's and died from it, and he watched it happen, and now he's been diagnosed with the same thing. Now, his experience was his mother took it beautifully. It didn't change her appearance. She became so much sweeter and kinder. She enjoyed every visit and every sunny morning that came on. It was all new and lovely in a way that it never had been before. So there's also that dilemma. You might be visioning that you don't want to live with Alzheimer's when you're telling your granddaughter that she has pimples all over her face and are being ugly and hateful. But you might not want someone to do you in if you were finding the Zen moments in every, you know, it's the ultimate in what we call in the spiritual world, living in the moment, right? You finally come to the place where you're living in the moment and everyone you are open-heartedly appreciating. And so is that, you don't know you're open-heartedly appreciating, so you maybe would have said, if I don't know what's going on, then I don't want to live any longer. And at the same time, you might be having a joyous day every day for 5 years. So it's complicated. So here's his thing. She was happy. She was happy. He saw that she was happy. Now, like we said, every dementia patient's different. So he might not be a happy demented person, right? He might be an angry dependent person. Or he might have let go of all his inhibitions and then striving and the worrying and the planning and the committing, and he might just be living every day in a beautiful moment. So when you're thinking about your planning, you have to think about, what is it that I do want to miss out on? And what is it that I'd be okay with experiencing? So you want to miss out on being angry and violent, right? But you might not need to miss out on being Zen happy, even if you had dementia. Okay, so in my class, some of you have heard all this already. I call these the off-ramps. They're opportunities no matter what you're dying of, or thinking you're dying of, or even imagining how your ending's going to go, where you have opportunities to make some decisions that will head you in certain directions, right? The medical system is going to speed you down the freeway of more and more and more treatments to more and more and more days of being alive. And to the extent that you want something different than that, you're going to have to take action to get off the highway, because it'll go without you. The treatments will go without your, if nobody speaks, if you can't speak and nobody else speaks for you, the treatments will happen to you. So here are some of the off-ramps kind of in order, and I'm going to go through them sort of fast. And then if we have a chance to talk about them, that would be great. So let's say you're 65 and you've skipped a bunch of bill paying and you've had a bunch of bounce check and your credit card's overloaded, and you think, wow, in 5 years from now, I'm going to be diagnosed with dementia. So, one thing is some of us are taking health maintenance medications. Are you taking high blood pressure medication? Are you taking bleeding medications? Are you taking, diabetes medications? Are you watching your diet for certain things that might, kill you? And to the extent that you can imagine that dying of X, Y, or Z that you stopped resisting up to now was better than a long stretch with dementia, those are opportunities to start right now in escalating your death date so that you don't live an extensive amount of time with dementia. Antibiotics are often easier because there's already a crisis. You wouldn't be getting antibiotics if there weren't a crisis, but a lot of crises that can be solved with antibiotics. First of all, the medical systems will say it's just a shot. You're going to let this person die just because you don't want to stick a needle in them. That's not a very good balancing test. So, but also they come over and over and over and over again. So it oftentimes, if you're susceptible to some kind of infection, you will be over and over again. And urinary tract infections are the most common, especially in dementia patients. And they also cause dementia-related symptoms that aren't dementia. So if anybody that you know that's older and acting strange, that would be one of the, when you're young, you know when you have a bladder infection, but when you're old, it's not the same way at all. So all kinds of medicines are delivered intravenously. If you have Crohn's disease, autoimmune illnesses, if you have sepsis from an infection, all those things are opportunities if you choose to refuse to have any kind of intravenous support. That's a way to hasten your death so that you die sooner of something else than you would die of your dementia, if that's your goal. Same with transfusion, same kind of intervention, right? It's getting a little more escalating in terms of how they're intervening. Now they're poking into you with a big needle and some stuff that they're putting into you, but you have the right to refuse those interventions if you want. Dialysis is a big one. Dying from kidney failure is very painless, and it doesn't take very long. So if you have pre-diabetes, if you have diabetes, if you're taking insulin shots, if they're suggesting dialysis, those are all opportunities to stop treatment. And you could stop treatment if you can still speak for yourself, or your advanced healthcare directive power of attorney can stop these treatments. You have all rights to stop all medical treatments imposed upon you. So if you don't want to have dialysis, you're allowed to say that, or your surrogate is allowed to say that for you. Chemotherapy, also lots of people these days finding prostate cancer when they're 75 years old, or breast cancer. They say don't even have mammograms now after 75, because you're going to find something that then you're going to have to decide about treating, when really it's going to probably take longer than whatever is going to kill you. So if somebody's suggesting chemotherapy and you're worried about dementia, maybe you refuse your chemotherapy, because then you have a way out. Okay, other ones that you would put maybe in advanced directive. We talked about this last month. The difference between a chemical intervention for cardiopulmonary problems, if your heart stops beating, or CPR, which is physical interventions, pounding on your chest or using a defibrillator machine or whatever. So you can designate whether you want medicine, but not physical contact. Or you can do a DNR for all CPR, and you can include medicine. I don't want any kind of resuscitation measures taken. You can refuse, if you faint somewhere, they'll want to put in a pacemaker. You can refuse to have a pacemaker put in. If you already have one, you could have it turned off. You know, there's two kinds of pacemakers, but one kind shocks you hard if your heart stops, to save you, like a defibrillator machine. It's a portable defibrillator machine if you're in your chest. But if you're wanting to die of dementia or something else, you don't want your defibrillator shocking your heart to start it back up when what you're actually dying of is kidney failure, right? That would be a bad thing. So you want to think about your possible interventions when they're proposing any pacemaker, if you have one or not. CPAP, these get confused, all these breathing things. CPAP, they just put a mask on and it's a little bit of pressured air, but you know, it just breathe, you just have a lot to breathe. And then you breathe out and then you breathe in. It's a mask. And a lot of people who have dementia, especially, are scared of masks. So it's a hard situation. The next level up is what we talked about before, being intubated. Then you have to be totally sedated because it's actually breathing for you. You don't have muscular breath. It pushes the air hard in, fills up the muscles of your lungs, sucks the air out hard, empties your lungs out. So you can't be awake because you would conflict with that breathing machine. So if you don't want to have a breathing machine because you're ready, then you have to say that in your advance directive. The very most tricky ones are these last ones, and I even have a deeper slide about it, but any kind of nutrition, what are you willing to do for nutrition? Are you willing to have an IV? Can they put, you know, sugar solution in to keep your calorie level up through an IV? That they're probably already putting other things in through your IV, so it wouldn't even be an extra needle stick, probably. It would just be, quote, keeping you alive through this. Artificial nutrition through a stomach tube. They can cut a little hole into your feeding system and insert food right in there, and then it can digest sort of on its way through. And so you can have it or not have a feeding tube. And then the last one that we talked about before, voluntary stopping and eating and drinking. Well, if you have dementia, you have to do this so early that you can remember and be consistent about it, right? That's the challenge. And it's debatable whether or not you can put it in your advance directive and have someone else require that you not be fed at your own wishes. It's debatable. So to the extent that you think that if you had bad dementia and you wished that your healthcare power of attorney would let you die, then you need to be extra specific. And I would even include a video, maybe several over several periods of time, if you know that you're declining, to be consistent over periods of time. So when you can't speak for yourself, there's a long record of what you wanted. You give your power of attorney a chance to withdraw food and hydration, but it's not a guarantee, because there's a big question in the law about whether food is healthcare or a basic necessity. And if it's healthcare, you can withdraw it. And if it's a basic necessity, then they won't let you. Like the same thing, right? You can't just put a pillow over your face and withdraw your oxygen. So it depends on how your state looks at this. And right now, Nevada's the only state that specifically allows a power of attorney to enact voluntary stopping eating and drinking. Okay. I think that, okay, and here's some, I'll send out this thing so you don't have to write this down, but here's a couple good dementia protocols. The one just called dementia-directive.org has a good one. Compassion and Choices, which is a very powerful organization that does a lot of advocacy for medical aid in dying, has sort of a work through it form. What do you care about and what's meaning to you? And you can do it on the computer and then print out your results. So that's a good one. And then the Alzheimer's Association has one that's more, slightly more conservative about care. They want these people to be cared for more than they're advocating to just put themselves out. So that one's a little more conventional, you might say. All right, so that's my spiel. Wasn't all that much shorter than normal, was it? Sorry about that. Anyway, so questions, comments, experiences, advice, preparations you've already made. Parties you want to throw. Things you need to say. Elizabeth.
Hi, thank you for that. I am sure wishing I had done this class before I revised my advanced directive. One of the things that you had said in the end of life planning class was to get a possibility was the DNR. And when I called my doctor, they said, we're not going to give you a DNR. That doesn't happen until, until there's actually a situation where you're going to die. And so I heard you say in this, a DNR for the chemical codes. So is everything that was on the slide after, these are all of these are things except for the voluntary stopping eating and drinking. All of those things could be spelled out and then would be honored in an advanced directive.
They could be spelled out.
I want them honored.
Yeah. So you have a better chance of them being honored. One, because I know Elizabeth, so I can say this because you're a single person, right? And so no one's gonna jump in and give this big passionate argument why really you wanted to stay alive for this. So you're insulated from some confusion over the subject. And therefore, once you're insulated from the confusion, then what your words are have some more chance to speak. But the truth is that if you're like Betty in our video, they're not going to let anybody just do away with you because you're not your full capacity. The system, no doctor would go along with that. You won't find somebody to enact that. Like you won't find someone to starve you without a lot of preparation, right? It's just a little too much. So, but the more concrete you are, there's two things about my off ramps. One is that they're off ramps that give you a medical excuse instead of a dementia excuse. So if you write in your advanced directive that you don't want CPR, then even if you're near the end of dementia, if you have a heart attack, they won't save you because then when you have the heart attack, you will be under medical crisis, right? So you put in your advanced directive now, he's not going to sign one that says tomorrow, but if you put in it now, when the emergency happens, then you are in medical crisis. Then they look at your form and it says, when I'm in medical crisis, which is now, don't do this thing. So it's still good to put it in there if that's what you want. But the truth is that it takes at least the rescue. Somebody's going to call 911 before the EMTs look at your do not resuscitate form and agree that they're not going to do anything after someone called. And someone's going to call your neighbor or lady at the mall or at the restaurant or whatever. You're going to get rescued. And then your language is going to come in. Now, if you're demented and you wrote your advanced directive 20 years ago and it said, do not resuscitate. But now people are around saying, oh, she loves her life. She's happy every day. The people at your old folks home love you and think you're fun and happy and everything like that. Then there's conflict about how long ago you said it and did you really know what you were getting into and what were you really thinking was going to happen, and now you seem fine. And so that's where no, they might not honor it. If you're happy now and what you said about it was a long time ago, so say it up, do a video, do more than one video, keep the conversation, send your information to your power of attorney by email in writing. Send them. I went to a class today and we talked about dementia and I'm really concerned that they're not gonna, I know nobody believes, but even if they do, this is really truly what I really send it and then send it again. Remember last year when we talked, you have to build a record because you're asking both the doctors who have a professional agenda and the people who love you, who have a personal agenda to kill you. Right? You're asking them to do a big thing. And no matter how much it's the right thing and how much you want it to be true, it's a big thing for those other people. So you have to give them the support that they need to be able to do something so aggressive.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Did I leave everyone speechless? It's hard. I skipped the last slide, which is a slide from the National Institutes of Health, which says that there are all these dementia advanced directives out there and they're only mildly meaningful. And that's the truth. The truth is that you do the best you can, but the system will protect life. And sometimes it won't be that easy to ease your way out. And if you can come up with a medical reason, like you have diabetes, like you're not going to take CPR, like you have high blood pressure now, and maybe you'll stroke out. And then if you have a stroke, you're allowed to refuse the treatment, right? If you have vascular dementia and your mental functioning is gone, then you're not allowed to refuse the treatment. But if you have a stroke and you can't walk, you're allowed to refuse the treatment. So you need to figure out which pathway you're going to wriggle your way down if you want to get out early. And as the cheering part, you also have to figure out how to be okay with having people care for you, even if you're the worst you might be. Because that's a loving thing. It's a loving thing. All right. Anybody else? Okay, 10:59, we did it.
Thank you, Miss Molly.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much,
Have a
Molly,
good
for
one.
doing all this.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thank you, Molly.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Molly. So much food for thought.
Yes, truly. Bye.